Hey guys, I'm Angela and welcome back to Hobby Night. This week, I'm painting my most handsome miniature yet with a couple of new tricks. I have a lot of Space Marines sitting around, but I was looking at my friendly local game store and I saw that the Black Templar just had their Primaris release, and all of those models look really, really cool. So I spent some time going over them, debating which ones I want to paint for this week, and I ultimately ended up on the Black Templar Marshal. I liked how elaborate he was, but he wasn't quite as busy or as detailed as Helbrecht, so we're going to go with the Marshal. And I have a little secret to tell you guys. I record this part after I've painted the model already, and he's turned out fantastic. I genuinely do think it's one of my best pieces yet, and I have a couple of tricks that really help me out. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. All right, so the first thing that I want to show you that has really helped in this particular project is my brand new Vortex Mixer, because this thing has completely changed my hobby painting, like everything. It is upgraded how well my paints mix together, because that's what it does. If you're not familiar, a Vortex Mixer will take a paint bottle, and you see how separated that is? You see how there's that darker color at the bottom and the lighter color at the top? Mm-hmm. Well, with a light press onto this rubbery bit, you can hear the ball that's rattling around inside. We are going to have some much more mixed paint. And the benefit is you can flip it upside down, keep doing it. But now, look at that. It's so much more mixed together, and it took only a few seconds, and I didn't have to sit there and do this for minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes at a time to really get my paints together, which has been fantastic, especially for my contrast paints, because they do separate pretty regularly. But it also works on the dropper bottles that you get from Master Series Paint with Reaper or Army Painter or Vallejo. So I have really been loving this. I use it on all of the paints that I mix, but I also used it on my rattle cans, which has completely changed the consistency of them. And I get such a better just like spray out of these, because you can just set it on there, let it mix together, flip it over, do it again. Make sure that you're putting enough pressure. Maybe shake it a little bit more, but basically the can's good to go, and I got great spray primes out of this and a great varnish on my final model. So let's go ahead, show you the Zenithal prime now, and then get to painting the mini. All right, I brought you down to the Imperial bunker because we need to get our model primed up using a Zenithal prime, but we're going to be doing something a little bit different from your standard Zenithal spray prime. I'm going to start, instead of with a black, with a gray color tone, because the black is a little bit too dark for the contrast paint to really work with. It absorbs so much of the color that you don't really actually get any of that vibrancy out of our contrast paints, especially when you're working with the lighter tones, and I'm going to be using a couple of very pale colors on this model. So the gray is going to work a lot better for our shadows. We're going to take this color and do an overall spray prime just like you would with a standard priming selection, and then we're going to move on and add some additional colors later. So let's get this gray color tone on there. He looks exactly the same because that gray color tone basically looks like the gray plastic, but I promise you he is properly primed. We're going to now move on to our lighter color tones to add to our Zenithal effect, and the first color we're going to use is Gray Seer. You can pick any light gray primer that you want, but I picked this one because it works exceptionally well with contrast paint, and that is precisely what we're going to be using on this model. Now, we want to apply this color very deliberately so that we don't end up messing up our Zenithal and we can get some really cool effects out of it. So we want to make sure that we're applying this color only when it's parallel to the model or above the model, never from below the model, or we will ruin that gray primer we used previously. So let's go ahead and get this color onto our model and then move on to the final step. The last color that we need to use to complete our Zenithal spray prime is a white. I'm going with Corax white, but you can use whatever color you want. And this one we're going to be applying directly from above, or slightly off to the side, but mostly from above, because we really want all of the highlights to be on top of the model. And because we are going to be painting this model in black, because he's a Black Templar, we really want those highlights to show through, so make sure to get a nice prime on top. Let's get this final highlight on the model and get to painting. Hello, Imperial Citizen. This is your regular reminder to subscribe to the channel and hit the Emperor's bell for notifications. And if you're feeling particularly devout, you can join my Patreon where you'll get exclusive unboxings, behind the scenes content, and more. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the video. Now that I've covered some of the new tools and how I got him primed, let's get him separated into manageable pieces and start applying some paint to this model. And the first color that we're going to be using is Black Templar. If you didn't think we weren't going to be using Black Templar contrast paint on this Black Templar, well, honestly, you must be new here. Hello and welcome. I hope you enjoy your stay. For the rest of you, I bet you saw this coming. Now, we're not going to just apply this to the armor. I do also want to apply this to any piece on the model that is going to end up being metallic. This is going to give me a nice foundation for the metallic to sit on top of, meaning I have to use less paint to actually get full coverage. Now that we have the black on there, we're gonna go ahead and move on to those metallics, and the first one that I'm going to use is the Army Painter's Plate Mail Metal. This is a nice bright silver metallic, and I really wanna use this as the dominant color tone on this model. It's gonna go on the trim, on the cage holding the skeleton in place, on all of the weapons and armor, on that glorious like metal skull belt that he's got. We're gonna paint all those little skulls in this color. We're going to get this pretty much everywhere. Although I am going to save a few I am going to save a few locations for Greedy Gold, which is another Army Painter color tone. And this I'm going to put on the axe, really kind of decorating it out and making it a little bit more regal looking than say the plasma pistol that he's got there, as well as on a few of the skulls on his armor. I just think that this is going to add a little bit of warmth into the piece, which will complement some of the other colors I'm using later. For my Marine's head, I'm going to go ahead and pull out Tawny Flesh from the Master Series paint line from Reaper. I've used this once on my Ogre. I really like the results, so I wanted to go ahead and use it here. Once this is dry and it's covering all of his bald fleshiness, we're going to go ahead and apply a 2-part contrast medium, 1-part Fyreslayer flesh mixture over top everything we just painted. This is going to work as a lovely glaze on his head, deepening into those recesses, allowing some shadows to form and really complement his flesh tone. I love the way this looks. I'm definitely going to be doing this going forward because it's a really easy method to get their heads done fast. It's now time to start working on that majestic flapping cape that he has. And for that, I'm going to pull out a bit of Blood Angel's Red. We're going to apply this to the back side of the cape, making sure to not let this color pool too heavily into the recesses so that we get a really nice smooth gradient with our Zenithal. It works beautifully, but that's not the only thing we need to apply the red to. I also want to put this on the shield and try a little bit of freehand. I really liked what GW did on their example on the box art, and while I'm not going to be doing the chain work, I want to at least attempt to do the color separation that they had, and I think I did a pretty good job. It's not the most even, but I still really like it. Then additionally, we're going to apply this to a couple of key locations on the weapons, in particular that plasma gun that he has, as well as a couple of the cables and everything you see throughout the model. This is going to be the dominant color of the piece, and I really like my placement on it. Once we're done with the red, we're going to move on to Seraphim Sepia, which I'm going to apply to the front side of the cape as well as all of the other cloth pieces on the model. This was an interesting choice for me because I debated doing it in Skeleton Horde and ultimately decided that the Seraphim would be a little bit of a different color, and since I wanted to use Skeleton Horde on the actual skeleton on his backpack, I did want some variation there. And this ended up working out really, really well. I was a bit nervous to do it because I wasn't sure if it was going to show through enough of the white undertone from our prime, but it really did, and I think the results are wonderful. The last little bit that we need to do is go ahead and move on to some Snakebite leather, which I'm going to apply to his belt just to finish that off. On to the details, starting with Warp Lightning. I'm going to use this on the plasma coils of his plasma gun because it matches what I've done on the rest of my Marines, and I like to leave a little bit of consistency throughout my various armies so that they feel like they're all in the same world. Once that's done, we're going to go ahead and pull out Skeleton Horde and in fact apply it to his bony friend that's hanging out on his backpack. Must make like, I wonder how much weight that actually adds. Probably not, he's a Space Marine, he's like super strong. We're going to paint that up in Skeleton Horde and then move on to the final color for our details, which is going to be Apothecary White. I had wanted to do something pale and light color tone to match the Templar color scheme, and Apothecary White screamed out at me because it would give me a little bit of a marble effect on his shoulder pads, and it works beautifully. I absolutely love how this turned out. With the details done, it's now time to move on to 2 final shades, and the first one that we're going to be using is a bit of Nuln oil. I'm going to be applying this to everything with the exception of the cloth, so it's going to go on the armor, on all of the metallics. I am going to put it on the leather belt because I do think it'll nicely darken that, but that's the only things I'm going to put it on.
Well, he looks very good. What's wrong?
Okay, so I'm debating doing the Nuln oil over the cloth. And I'm terrified because on one hand, I really like what I have right now. I think it's really nice, but it doesn't have like quite, I don't know. I feel like
I see what you're talking about. It's like in the depths of those folds, for example, it's very white compared to what.
So I don't know.
Turn him around.
It's so good. Like the cloth looks so good and I'm totally worried about ruining it. But I've done some Nuln oil on the white that I did on the shoulder and it came out pretty good and I was able to like pad it up.
Let's do it.
Okay, all right, we're gonna do it. I did it! And it turned out amazing. I actually am really happy that I ended up putting the Nuln oil on the cape. Now we have one final shade to work with and that is Reikland's Fleshshade. This is going to go exclusively on his head just to deepen those shadows and add a little bit more detail to his face without us actually having to dot the eye or do any of that. It's time to get his base ready, and thankfully GW provided a nice little rock for him to stand on, so I've got that glued down to the base. We're going to paint it up using a bit of Baslicanum gray, and then after that has had a little bit of time to dry, we're going to go ahead and move on and apply Astrogranite Debris as a texture paint to everywhere else that is exposed. I really like this over the standard Astrogranite because I feel like the texture you get is a little bit more honestly just cool to look at, and it definitely picks up a dry brush better, which is what we're going to move on to after the Astrogranite Debris has had plenty of time to dry. The first dry brush we're going to apply once it has dried thoroughly is going to be Dawnstone. This is a nice lighter gray color tone that really accents the sort of Mechanicus standard gray look of the Astrogranite, and I really like the effect, and we're going to push this pretty hard. Then once that is done, we're going to move on to using Longbeard's gray, which is an even paler gray, and we're going to focus this on the most raised portions of the base. In particular, we're going to hit those edges of the jagged rocks pretty heavily to make them stand out a bit more. With that, we just need to look at the final model and get him onto this base, so let's do it. And here he is. Meet QT Marshal. I love how this miniature turned out. I said that already, I think in the beginning, because I revealed to you that I filmed this after I've already finished it, but I genuinely love how this turned out. Between the effectiveness of the Vortex Mixer, just being able to actually mix my paints as well as my primers as efficiently as it did, plus the control that I had with my contrast paint, the fact that the model itself, the sculpt, is just beautifully detailed. It took all of the contrast paint really, really well. It took the metallics really, really well. The sculpt itself is just very cool, and I feel like I hit the correct level of bright saturation of some colors that I absolutely love, along with the grim darkness that I feel like people demand when it comes to Space Marines. Really, the only thing that I wish that I had pushed myself maybe a little bit further on, and I'm definitely going to be working on this in the future, is adding a little bit more grit and grime to them. I think with the tabard especially, I could have added a bit more detail in to really grime that up, make it look like he's not freshly off of a vehicle or something that's been pristinely clean, and make it actually look like he's been out on that crusade. So maybe I could have pushed it like that, but as just a presentation piece, as something that I'm really proud of, or I'd be happy to submit to say a painting competition or something, I'd absolutely submit QT to a painting competition. I hope my friendly local game store has one soon. Let me know what you think of him down in the comments below. I really, really enjoyed painting this guy up. I definitely think I might end up getting more Black Templar just because I want to at least put together maybe a 500 point list or something I can at least run maybe in Kill Team, because The new models are really cool. I super enjoyed painting this one up. Now, before I head out, I do want to give a huge thank you to my patrons for allowing us to make content like this. Without your guys' support, we wouldn't be able to continue to do this, so thank you very, very much. If you'd like to join them, you can find a link down below. In the meantime, I have been Angela, you've been watching Hobby Night, and I'll see you this weekend with an extra long news video. Bye!